Hi, everybody. Welcome to Script Camp. This is the free intro course for our 8-week boot camp that will take you from idea to finished draft in just 2 months of writing. So let's take a look at what we're going to be working on today. If you're having trouble hearing or being heard, then make sure to just check out these troubleshooting slides at the beginning here. The microphone icon in the bottom left-hand corner of your Discord window is what you need to click on to mute or unmute yourself, and you should just please keep your mic muted unless you're called on in the course, or many times I will just ask who wants to answer this question, in which case you can do so. But otherwise, just use the text channel. We are on Discord, so if you're watching on one of our other platforms and want to join the class, make sure to download Discord and come join Script Camp. We are a screenwriting community that's focused on helping take you from idea to first draft to more polished script, and overall, just this is like a gym for writing. So you should not come here expecting to get just one project done or one project made. This is like, lifting weights and building the skills necessary to do this for a living, or to put you on the path to doing this professionally. So there's lots of free classes and events and workshops here, and some paid classes and events as well, such as Writer's Lab. We'll have a few more details on some of these soon, but the essentials are that my name is Connor. I teach the boot camps and Wednesday and Thursday classes sometimes as well. I've been a pro screenwriter since 2017 when I got signed for the first time after placing in the Launchpad contest in the top 10. And since then have written for Creepshow on the Shudder Network, and have a script set up at a production company in town currently, and have just been doing rewrites and all kinds of different writing work in Hollywood since I first got signed. So I'm going to be running the feature bootcamp course, but we'll have other teachers for certain other classes that we teach also. We've done playwriting, we have a graphic design class coming up, and just many other elements will be taught by interesting and different guests. So lots of reasons to keep checking these classes out. The bootcamps are it's like a span of a certain number of weeks to write a complete first draft of one of these things, such as a feature film script, a pilot script, or a stage play, a rewrite of something you've already finished, or a pitch for something you haven't yet written, perhaps. We also just recently ran a 4-week horror thriller bootcamp where we got you ready and organized and fully outlined to start writing a horror or thriller feature film in the upcoming bootcamp session, which starts really soon. So we are starting new sessions in feature and also TV and also rewrite. So we're looking for anyone who's interested in those things to sign up beforehand and check it out. So you can sign up at scriptcamp.net before the class starts. Today, you don't have to sign up for today because this is a free intro course. But if you want to be in the later ones, make sure that you sign up. You can become an unlimited member and get access to all of our boot camps, events, and everything. And that comes with a 2-week free trial. So check it out. You'll get over 70 hours of classes a month. Like I mentioned before, just make sure to use the text channel on the left-hand side of your screen, which I can bring up here, if you have questions or comments. And I'll sort of check back every once in a while to see what what has built up. But that's the best way to get your question answered or your comment heard. So please use that text. And when we get to the logline review portion, then be prepared to unmute and to engage in actual out loud conversation using your microphone and your wonderful personality, because so much of this is very, very social. This is not the kind of writing that you can do entirely by yourself, locked away in your attic or your basement or whatever. This is a very social job that you have to get used to communicating and talking about story and diagnosing problems with them very early on, and overall just get used to working with the sort of dough of a story before you get it into the actual writing the pages phase. So get used to that idea. Let's look at the overview here. So we start with loglines today. Premise and logline, that's just the very basics of the idea for your movie. And that's going to be boiled down to one simple sentence, which is going to have some of the key structural points built in or baked into it. And that we can already start to see the structure of the movie. And the point of this one sentence is to communicate the vision for what your story is, so that you can tell it to somebody and they might be interested enough to actually read your script. Or alternatively, you can also just use this to keep yourself on track, and you yourself should not deviate too much from the logline that you've written, so as to sort of act as a navigation post for you to use to the end of your draft. If you find yourself drifting too far away from this one sentence, then you know that you have changed your story's concept. So this one sentence is super actually important to make sure you spend this full week nailing it down before we go any further into your script. So one sentence logline that describes your feature film story. It doesn't mean you need to know everything about it. It doesn't mean you need to know the ending. And we'll be talking about what makes a good logline and what should go into it. and we'll have at least the second half of class. I like to review as many student loglines as we get. So, maybe not more than 2 or 3 per person if you're trying to decide between a couple of them. But up until we get to that portion of the second half of class, you should be working on your logline, the one-sentence description of the movie that you want to write. We have some templates that you can look at that might be helpful for if you're not sure how to even start formatting this. So I'll put that in the chat here. Feel free to use this to just jog your creativity. If you're like, oh gosh, how do I even start on a logline? Then just be writing on your own as we go through this course, and as you're learning more, or as you are perhaps recapping things that you already know. You should be working on this new version, so that by the time we get to in about 50 minutes on the second half, we will have great fully formatted loglines for us to look at. Even if they're not perfect, they don't have to be amazing right away. This is a class. The point is to refine and refocus them and make them as good as possible. But just be working on what is the one-sentence description of the movie that I want to write. So you should have a really clear picture of the genre. So try to just be working on that up until we get to that point. Okay, so loglines is most of what we're doing today. So just the idea for what is your movie about. The very basics. That's going to include, the protagonist, the hero, is trying to accomplish this with this standing in the way, and this is kind of where it goes. That's as much as we should be getting today. You don't need to go much deeper into it than that. Next week is going to be week 1 on why this story. So we'll be talking about just dramatic arguments and the theme early on. What is the point of me writing this? Why is this relevant now versus relevant universally? And also we'll be filling out the sketchbook, which is like this unsorted collage of all your influences and pieces of research and information that you're going to need in order to write your movie. So you're gathering and you're just collecting for the next 2 weeks. You're just collecting into your sketchbook. You're refining and trying to simplify and streamline things as much as possible. But there's really no wrong answers of what to include. So just be gathering ideas and inspiration, and be watching lots of movies similar to the ones that you are considering writing, and reading lots of movies that are similar to the ones that you are writing, and just be a collector of pieces of disparate information that will need to go into this movie for the next 2 weeks. That's what the sketchbook is all about. Week 2 is on outlining. That's the summary of the script. So we're going to try to bang out a list of the major events that happen in the order that they must occur. It doesn't have to include absolutely everything, but it's going to be the major moments of the story in order. Week 3 is on outlining these scene cards. That's the sort of expanded version of that synopsis, so that we now have a paragraph for every single scene in the entire movie, which is about 40-ish. It's a little less on some genres and a little longer on some, but between 35 and 55 scenes, essentially, is all you get. The movie is the closest to the short story, closer than any other medium. So you've got to be really limited in the number of scenes that you're using, and make sure that you are being as effective and efficient as possible in choosing what to include. Because you can dramatize things in so many different ways, which is why you'll see 2 different movies made about the same event or the same person that will be completely different in tone, in occurrences, and who the principal character is on, and where the focus is presented, just because there's so many ways to tell any story, and you need to be trying to refine this to the simplest possible and most effective possible way for the emotional experience that you are trying to create. And you're trying to get as much of that down in these scene cards as possible, meaning this is the writing. Week 3, you are writing the movie, even though we're not actually formatting things in pages yet. You are making sure you know what happens on every single page of the script. So this is the heavy lifting, and we're using a method in Screenplay in which we front load the first half of the writing process into extremely meticulous outlining, so that we're never lost in the woods as we attempt to make our way from the beginning to the end of that first draft. It might seem excessive, or it might seem like this is more than I've ever outlined before, but you should give it a try and try to build on this method and make it your own, and use whatever tips and tricks work for you, and just adopt this for now and try to just teach yourself this way, and I think it will really help you. And also, just you must be able to know structure like the front and back of your hand if you want to be able to nail meetings, if you want to get staffed on a show. If any of these, if you want to work in Hollywood, you need to know this stuff, and you need to be able to explain it at the drop of a hat. You should know 3-act structure like it is an intimate relation. What am I talking about? An intimate relationship? What am I saying? You should know it very intimately, very closely. 3-act structure should come so naturally to you that you can effortlessly break any story down into its 3 component parts. So even if this seems strange, or even if this seems like not how you normally work, maybe you normally discover things as you go to some extent, we're trying to really nail down this method of figuring it all out beforehand. There's going to be some gaps, and there's going to be some things you can't foresee, and some things you have to just think on your feet for. That's fine. But for the most part, you should not be leaving any mysteries in the story before you embark on the journey through it. So week 4, once we finally finished all that, the first half of that class is all in figuring out what happens on every single page of the movie. Then we actually start the script on week 4, which is July 15th. And we're going to be writing 20 to 25 pages a week of that script. That's going to be, if you're writing on just weekdays, that's like 4 pages a day. That's like 1 or 2 scenes, perhaps, maybe, up to 3 really short ones. If you maintain that for the next 4 weeks, you will have a script done by the end of our class, which is going to be August 19th. Excuse me. So you'll be finishing by the end of the week that follows our final class session. So really you have more like 10 weeks because we have week 0 and we have the week that follows our final class session. So 10 weeks is what you should be able to write a feature film in. If you want to be a professional writer, you should be aiming to be able to write between 8 and 12 weeks for a strong first draft. If it's taking you way longer than that, you may need to refine your process. But we set the bootcamp schedule like this for the primary reason that this is a realistic allotted amount of time for you to complete this in the professional world. Okay, so let me check if we have some questions so far. Looks like some folks have already posted loglines, which is great. So get ready to repost that later just so that we can keep them all in the same place and we don't have to scroll up through the whole thing for them. So just write it down on your Word document or your Google Docs or sticky note or something for now. But we will definitely get back to that. So thanks for having that. Lazid asks, do I think that could happen with a show? I'm not sure what the question is referencing that could happen with a show. So I'm not 100% sure. Feel free to clarify in the text if you'd like. Any other questions before we move on into our slideshow talking about the essentials and the groundwork and the things that you should know for the course? Feel free to type your questions in the chat. The question is if you can make a show in 8 or 10 weeks. No, you have significantly longer for a TV show than 8 to 10 weeks. It's like for it also really is just going to be up to the show. The showrunner is the one who's supposed to be able to really keep on deadlines for a TV show. You're not going to be required to be like you are still in working on a show. You still do have to deliver things under your own deadlines, but they're a little easier to manage and a little more urgent because the showrunner is right over your shoulder saying like, we need this by this time. Deadlines in the feature world, they're a little bit looser. Actually, you often can ask for more time if you need it, but like the general expectation is between 8 to 12 weeks. So yeah, TV works. Yeah, that does not apply to TV. Hope that answers that question. Any other questions before we move on? Feel free to either type or unmute and ask out loud. Alien Boy says, I actually want to start over with me trying to learn screenwriting. Okay, great. So forget everything you know and start right here. This is a good place to start from the beginning. And this class is like a 101 course on how to write a movie and more broadly, how to write movies. So you're in the right place, it sounds like. Looks like no more questions for now, which is good, unless my headphones are not working or something. But let's move on and let's look at a couple of our first few slides here and our overview for the class. But just before we move on, if you want feedback, we have lots of ways for you to get that on Scriptcamp. If you can post to swap your script in one of our text channels, like features and pilots and scripts, or you can submit to our table reads, which are on Sundays, or our script swaps, which are on Tuesday, and that's going to be the best way to get feedback is to trade with someone and invest as much work as they are investing in you by putting in the work and reading their work and responding to that as well. So doing favors for other people will be the best way for you to find collaborators and partners. Very few people are interested in just, here's a script, who wants to read it? So unless your logline is undeniably amazing, then you're almost not going to get anyone to respond to that. So do the work, meet other people, meet them halfway. Don't expect them to do it all for you. Saturday Writers Lab, that's for members. You can bring up to 5 pages of anything you're working on to get my feedback on it, whether that's pages from a script or an outline or an idea for a movie or a logline or any question or topic you just want to hear more about. That is like office hours that you can go and fill in any gaps in the things that you haven't learned. We also have a rewrite bootcamp coming up the 25th. That's pretty soon. So we're looking for interest in rewriting scripts of your own. So we're looking for a commitment. We just need a minimum number of students to run that class. So we have a form that you can fill out if you are interested in that, so we can get a head count there. And lastly, you can order a consultation, which is just notes from me throughout the whole script and a 30-minute call to explain the major points and to answer any questions that you have. So you can get that at scriptcamp.net/coverage. Okay, let's look at how to enroll. scriptcamp.net/membership if you want to sign up for the free trial for the membership. That's 2 weeks. Or you can just buy the course on its own, scriptcamp.net/classes. If you haven't signed up, you can click the little green plus emoji in the chat to get access to our chat channels and our video library of all the recordings of previous classes, and just get a step ahead. Okay, so should we add a little, not sure, should we add the little green check mark here? There we go. So yeah, feel free to add it onto that post there. Let's keep going. So, discussion. This course is geared, this course that you're in now is the basis of Script Camp. This is how to write feature films. This is the topic that I know the best because I am primarily a feature writer, though my only actual paid credit has been on a TV show. It's true. But I have broke into this as a feature writer in 2017, and that's what I am an expert in. That is what I know the most about. I specifically specialize in horror, thriller, and action films, but I write many different genres, everything from musicals to westerns to sci-fi to fantasy. I write novels and plays and many different things, but horror, thriller, and action are kind of that core of what I do. So maybe feel free to weigh in and tell us what it is that you want to do. Do you want to be a pro feature writer, or are you writing something for yourself to direct maybe, or do you want to star in it yourself? Or what is your sort of pie-in-the-sky goal? What is the track that you are trying to work your way down? What are your goals as a writer? Feel free to either tell us in the text or unmute and introduce yourself.
I guess I can say something.
Go ahead.
I feel like writing for me is just like trying to survive moments. So that's what my goal is, just to like survive moments.
Survive moments? Can you explain what you mean?
Just like it's kind of like self-preservation. If I don't write, then I'll be distracted by things that are very self-destructive, like watching the news.
Sure. Mentally draining.
So it's like, yeah, it's therapy, really, the writing process for me.
Okay, that's cool. So you just do this to sort of like as a self-therapy, not as, you don't intend to do this as a career?
Yeah, it of course that anybody would want to be a writer as a career.
Oh, no, you'd be surprised.
That's a
Not some people just do this as a hobby, or just because they like it, or just because they want to make things with their friends, or there's all kinds of reasons. No one has to be has to aspire to be a professional. So yeah, we're definitely open to all different, all different people from all different, who are approaching it from all different angles, I guess I should say.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm finding that writing these sketchbooks is really fun. And right now I have 3 active sketchbooks, and I'm just having a great time just with that. So, and then just trying to decide what am I going to write next. So, yeah,
Yes, the constant
love this.
battle. What am I going to write next? I think we were all very
Yeah,
familiar with this one, but yeah, that's a nice spot to be in because you're just, all the possibilities are out in front of you, and you're just you're auditioning them basically. You're like, which one is worthy
yeah,
of my time?
exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
I love that. Thanks, Carmen. Looks like we got some other comments as well. Bridget says, my goal is to be a pro feature writer. Well, that's awesome. You're in the right place. This is how you learn to do that, essentially. Someone from Twitch says, I want to write a 50 Shades of Grey type screenplay. Z Tom Crossley. Sure, you're in the right place for that. You so like in the erotic thriller, perhaps? I guess, is that what that is? I've actually done rewrites on erotic thrillers, and they are definitely coming back. So there is a hunger for that type of material. I'm assuming you're not trolling. I assume you actually want to do that. No, you're in the right place for that as well. Lazid says, my goal is to get my play produced. I like writing, but also want to get it produced. Get a play produced. Okay, yeah, we did a playwriting class that we have in our video archive. So if you become a member, you can watch through, it's like 8 hours of awesome instruction from our guest lecturer, Morgan Smalley. And that's all on playwriting. So many crossover similarities, and this will help you with the general skills of playwriting, but there are just certain things that are very distinct that would be more evident in that class rather than this one, but, still a good place to be. Anyone else want to weigh in? Monica says, I wrote my first screenplay at 10 years old, and I've been trying to get into the movies ever since. Making movies has always been a dream, but writing is what I think I can contribute. Oh, that's a great way of framing that. Yeah, I wrote my first screenplay when I think I did like terrible little short films when I was in like 7th and 8th grade, and sketches with my friends, and then I wrote my first feature script in senior year of high school after I got a book on screenwriting for a gift, I think. From then on, I've been writing full features since 18-ish years old. Anyone else want to weigh
in? For me, I tried to get into screenwriting. Like I've got these 2 books about screenwriting, but unfortunately, because for one way or another, I have it like. Unfortunately for me, I haven't really gave them my full attention. I mean, I have read them, but I haven't like finished them, and I'm always halting myself with the process of actually writing a script, especially since I had this Western horror idea that I've been thinking about way back since 2017. And I'm just kind of sick and tired of doing this to myself, just halting my process of like screenwriting just because I want to read these 2 books. So this is why I'm saying I want to start over learning everything that I want to know about screenwriting so I can actually just do it.
Sure, that's a great reason. Yeah, some extra motivation, some extra incentives, and extra deadlines and things like that to just force yourself to do the work. That's all great, and the books I'm sure will be helpful too. Like I said, I started with books, and there's no book that will like really mess you up if you read it, because you can just take whatever you want from any method, just like you can do with any class, like even for this one, for instance. Educational materials, that's all there for you to study and to scavenge for what works for you. And if you're finding that you're having trouble just starting and just going, maybe you just need to do some program like this that will give you that extra boost that you need. So great answer. Lazid says, I tried to write my screenplay at 8 and a half, but I gave up. No, I'm retrying. Well, no time like today. Amanda says, my goal has been to have an animated TV show picked up. I'm working on building an audience with my comic strips and satirical humor essays, as there's something that give great fulfillment along the way and helps me practice creating mini stories. Okay, sure, yeah, that's a unique goal, and like this is probably a pretty good way to go about that. Just because if you're going to be writing full scripts for an animated TV show, maybe you want to check out our pilot class, which would give you sort of more tips for writing something in that shorter format. But this will just be really instructive on the topic of structure in general, and just working on a deadline and hitting those page numbers and those page counts, and just the feature class should really help with that kind of stuff too. But yeah, we do offer a bit of everything. So whether you want to write an animated show, whether you want to write live action sketches, whether you want to write horror films or romance films, whatever you want to do, there's a way to do it at Script Camp. And soon we'll be adding a lot more novel writing stuff as well, because I've been moving more into novel writing over the past 2 years and trying to break in as a novelist as well. So we will be adding tons of sci-fi and fantasy, especially and horror-focused novel writing classes coming up. Okay, so we have one more comment before we move on. Let's see, it's from VJ Rain, who says, to start writing, but no clue how to get started. I've got the idea and just of what I want to write, but dwelling deep and building characters is a different ballgame. Yes, that is true. It's easy to have like a lot of scattered ideas, but to actually bring those all together into something cohesive is something that requires a bit of structure to it. So we definitely focus on that sort of stuff. Great. So thanks so much for these answers. It sounds like everyone's coming from different angles and different approaches, but mostly I think that the real value of the course is learning to organize, and this is not the process of how are we going to write a great script in the class. No, it's going to be a first draft of something, and if you're newer at writing full-length stories in general, it's probably not going to be that good, which is something that sort of hangs a lot of people up. I think a few people here mentioned even that they've been having trouble, they've been struggling to just start and to just actually get through stuff, because I think a lot of people are hamstrung by this idea of, oh, but it's not going to be good enough, or I'm not going to make it as good as I want it to be, or it's an idea I've had for a long time that I want to preserve the integrity of, or it means something to me because it's really personal, or anything like that. So you have to really move beyond that idea, because the only way to become an amazing writer is, well, there's 3 things you have to do. You have to read a lot. You absolutely have to read a lot, and the chances are very high you are not reading enough scripts. You have to write a lot, and you have to finish things and move on to the next thing. Those are the only 3 things you have to do to become a better writer, and even to become a professional. You don't have to buy any one particular book. You don't have to buy any one class or be in any one class like this. This is not instrumental to your success. This is not completely required by... there's no degree you have to get. You don't have to get some certificate before they'll let you do this. The only thing stopping you from writing amazing scripts is... that's kind of the amazing thing about writing, is like the only thing stopping you, and I mean, if you have a keyboard and a software to write on, which are free and available, the only thing stopping you from writing a script that will sell and get you a career in Hollywood is yourself. And so those things come down to organization, motivation, and many of these skills that just need to kind of... This is like 9 different jobs in one, as I often say. And so the things you should focus on early on are getting your foundational, like bedrock fundamentals of storytelling down, making sure that you can write and finish and edit and revise and get feedback and use it effectively and take it gracefully and be a kind, easy person to work with. Of course, work on those things as well. You might not think of those as skills, but they are in fact skills, and you should actively try to be easier to work with. And finally, you just need to put the work in, because the main thing you have control over is the quality of your own scripts. Everything else, a lot of it comes down to like luck and other people and timing and access and networking, and like there's a lot of other stuff out of your control. Well, networking's in your control, but you see what I mean. There are many things less in your control than just the quality of the work. So you need to put the years in at the beginning, and it will take years to just become undeniably amazing at writing. But don't believe that any one script has to be good. That's a fallacy. And the first 5 scripts, I put it to you that your first 5 scripts will not be that good. So with that in mind, don't pick things that you care so much about that there's no way you're going to be able to start, or no way you're going to be able to finish. You should pick somewhat disposable ideas. And the fact that we're writing this in just 8 weeks, it allows you to, it opens you, it like frees you to sort of write something kind of perhaps that you never thought would get made, or you think is exciting but is a little silly, or it's like an idea that you thought would be cool but you never really planned on writing, something like that, and embrace that for this 8 weeks, just as a vehicle to improve your skills. Monica says having moral support and accountability in finishing the pages is one of the most important things about communities like this. Yeah, so every week we do check in with you. We ask, what problems have you been having? What story issues are you struggling to resolve, and how can we help with that? And we will always be asking about recent scripts you've read and pages that you've done. So I don't need to go over all of these slides, but I will just say, get used to the idea that that any one script is not going to be the thing that makes your career. You have to be able to build the skill of moving on and detaching from your work, and you have to untether yourself from your ideas, because even in the best case scenarios, they're going to be bought and developed and changed and changed and changed and changed, and you'll have to just change them again and again and again. And it's not up to you. You're not the final boss in this unless you are the writer and director and producer. So you need to get used to the idea that everything is subject to change and nothing is set in stone. Even once the movie is shot, there will be editing, there might be reshoots, there might be any number of things. You can't be too precious about your work to be a professional screenwriter, which is partially why I myself might recommend moving more into novels and plays if you want to write things that are going to be definitive works of art, that if they ever get adapted, they will be beholden to some extent to that original work. And your stories will be much more protected, and you will have more control over them at every stage if you're writing novels or plays. If you're writing scripts alone, it is considered a working blueprint, a potential working blueprint for an artistic product. It is not considered an artistic product in any way. So here's a question in the chat. Where can you read great scripts for free that will help? Well, you can look right here. blacklist, which is going to be the last 15 years of the most highly voted on scripts by executives and assistants around town. It's somewhat political, but this is going to be the most liked scripts going around. So you have many years of scripts to look back through here. You should be reading 3 of them every week. Any other questions based on what we talked about so far before I move on? Oh, somebody else says I wish to write novels. Cool. Yep, we will be moving Scriptcamp more in that direction soon. Other questions? Monica says the script for your favorite movie is probably available if you Google it. Yeah, exactly. So almost any script from that has been out in theaters. After a few years, you can usually find it. Just Google the name of the movie, script, and then PDF. Okay, let's keep going on for now and see where we are at. So I'm not going to go over the whole slide. The main point is this takes many, 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 many years to get good at. This is not something you can just rush to the end of. There is no shortcut to becoming an amazing writer. Your job is to become a sort of generator of unlimited ideas who they're not defined by just one thing that you've written. You aren't spending years and years to write a script. You are writing several scripts a year at the very least. And you are able to write them on a quick time frame and of high quality, within 8 to 12 weeks. That is the goal here. So this is work. This takes a long time, and no one starts good at it. Do remember, pick one of these newer, fresher ideas that you're less invested in and not something that you have been really attached to. If you're spending more than 6 months on something, you probably need to change your process. I'm not going to go over all these myths and assumptions just because we're more than half an hour in already, and we just need to actually we need to make sure we have plenty of time to review everyone's log lines in as much detail as possible. But I just want to highlight 1 or 2 of these things really quick. One, you don't need a degree or film school or any specific, like I said, not even this class. You do not even need any class, workshop, or film studies degree to do this. So those things might help you, and if you are struggling with any aspect of this, maybe consider trying one of those things. Is there anything else I want to highlight here necessarily? You know what? I think this all pretty much stands on its own. I think we get the idea from these. We have some realities on here that are this is really doom and gloom and difficult to do. But let's move on to the actual steps of how to do this. Number 1 is you need to get really good at writing movies. So let's really just actually focus on that step for from when you first start your first script until for the first several years of that. Just look at number 1 because that takes years to do. That's why step 2 is actually go back and really do step number 1 because almost everyone thinks that they're ready before they're really ready. Just because you've seen a lot of movies does not mean you will be automatically good at writing movies. Just because you've read a lot of scripts does not necessarily mean you will be good at writing scripts, but it will really help to have read a lot of them. Anyway, so your goal is to basically make a portfolio of 3 to 5 unique and amazing and undeniably riveting sample scripts for your, your active portfolio, as I might call it, the ones you're sending around at any given time. You want to make sure to be entering those in as many fellowships and contests and other expensive bullshit like that as you can, because that's sort of the best way to get recognition if you have no networking opportunities. You're going to do that until you can get repped by a manager, and you're going to have to continue networking this whole time. Probably move to Los Angeles sooner rather than later to make all these steps easier. You can do this by placing, you can get the manager meetings by placing in contests and fellowships, by meeting them or their assistants perhaps, at parties and events in Los Angeles, or by querying. Again, maybe very few of them respond to this. In any case, that takes many years to do, and good luck. Once you get signed with the manager, finally, you will work with them to either get a writing assignment, possibly pitching several times on these and approaching several different companies with takes on material that they have, and trying to develop a spec that you can take out with your manager. So that's going to be something that they will be guiding your construction of that script, essentially. They want to be as involved as possible, usually nowadays, and they will have all kinds of great notes for you. But in any case, it takes forever to work on that script with them until they're done with it, about 6 months usually. Then they're going to go out with it to their contacts. If you did a decent job with it at least, and they have staked their reputation on taking it out, usually you'll get some meetings from it. So you will be able to take what are called general meetings as a result of that, which are meet and greets with the creative executives at different companies, or sometimes with people of other roles. But in any case, you will be just getting to know them and seeing if you're the kind of person they might want to work with. And then you might be able to potentially pitch something to them, but you're probably going to have to write it for free. They won't pay you to write it. And then you'll just basically go through a lot of meetings, a lot of development, a lot of back and forth with your manager like this for several months or perhaps several years. And different things will fall apart, because then everything can fall apart at 500 different steps and in 100 different ways. You'll have to do lots of work for free, and you just will not be getting paid for any of this. and then eventually, finally, you will hopefully get something both set up and then packaged and then sold, and then you will be able to join the Writers Guild, and then you've made it, sort of. But then you have to keep doing that, because only 50% of members of the Writers Guild actually make any money from writing in a given year. So this is not really a stable or consistent career path for the sane. It's difficult for a lot of reasons. Here's just a few of them that I don't have to go way too into, but getting good feedback is just really hard. You don't have to always consult experts, but your friends and family may not be the best sources for determining if something is professional, industry, Hollywood quality or not. It's difficult to determine where your skill level is at and where it would need to be. And a script is just a really long document that it takes a long time to read, and people have a wide spectrum of reactions to the material. People who don't know what they're talking about or don't know have the expertise, they usually just want to support you. And people who do have the expertise are usually going to be charging you money, or they just are otherwise hard to convince to do this in their spare time because they do this all day and they're not looking to do it more. So there's lots of reasons this is pretty tough. I don't need to go through every piece here, but the point is this is a difficult uphill climb. You should want to do this because you want to be a professional writer, because you want to do this as a hobby for personal enjoyment or self-fulfillment of some kind, because you want to direct a movie yourself. And that's pretty much the list. It's not really a thing. Sometimes people have this idea of, I wrote a book and I want to write a movie of it to get the book to sell more. And it's like, well, you want that to be the only script you ever write, and you want that to be a movie that gets made, really? So just getting one thing made is like saying I want to play in just one NBA game. You're not going to probably, like, the amount of practice and work and the amount of other games that you have to play in to get to an NBA game means it's kind of just, it becomes a silly statement. So these are the reasons to really want to be a screenwriter. But don't worry too much whether any individual script is good or not. Your main priority is, how do I write and execute to the highest extent of my ability, and revise once or twice with peer feedback to make it as good as it can be, and then I will move on to the next one, because you have a road of bricks to build. Just 1 or 2 bricks, it doesn't matter how good they are, you have like 100 more to go. So you should focus on plan, write, finish, revise, move on. Those are the steps. Okay, let's check if we have questions so far. Amanda asked for the link to the TV Pilot Bootcamp on the website page. Yeah, we have YouTube videos that are recordings of some of those early classes, and we can also just link you the slideshows here. Lizzie says, can I work on my new script while listening? Sure, if you want to. I'd recommend working on the logline first, because that is the main thing that we're going to be reviewing in about 20 to 30 minutes. Are the one-sentence summaries of the movie that we have posted a template for that you can scroll up and find if you want some tips as to how to start. So yeah, you should be working on loglines most of all. Thanks for those links, Nacho. There's the link to the TV Pilot class. We also have the page for membership there, which you can sign up and get access to our library of all the recordings. VJ says it's 1:40 a.m. in the UK, wondering if this is being recorded and you can watch it later. Yes, it is, and you can. This will be on YouTube later. That's the easiest place to watch, but you can also watch on our Twitch channel or a few of the other streaming places like that. So yeah, don't worry, you can totally watch this later. Monica says, what are my favorite horror scripts on the blacklist? I'm having bad luck. I'm having a kind of a brain melt moment right now. I can't quite even think of any blacklist movie titles at all. Let me get back to you on that, though. That's a great question, and I want to be able to send you like a more thorough list. We've had this question come up a couple times before in the horror thriller class, and I had answers then. But let me actually assemble real recommendations for you, or maybe people in the chat can link what they like as well. Yeah, Carmen really liked to see how they run. That was a big one off of this most recent blacklist. Maybe start there if you haven't. Okay, so yeah, we have once you are in the classes here, we recommend you're reading at least 3 scripts a week, and we have plenty for you to choose from. So there will always, like, you may not like all of them. I mean, not all of them will be to your taste, even a professional work, but there is something to learn from every one of them. Okay, let's look at the breakdown of our 8 weeks in this class. Week 1 to 2, we want to make sure that this logline is as strong as possible. So that's what we're mostly looking at today. In about 20-30 minutes, we'll be looking at your loglines and refining them as much and giving as much as we can, and giving you stuff to work on there for next week. The sketchbook is the thing that comes next, and you can start on that today too. Excuse me. The sketchbook is going to be a collage of all your influences and inspirations, and there's nothing wrong to include in there. It's going to have at the top your ideas for your loglines or your comps or your, genre or any ideas for things that might be in the movie, scenes, lines of dialogue, characters, locations, pictures, videos, links. So just you can make your sketchbook today and start working on that. I think we have here it is, yeah, slide on that. So I would recommend opening up a sketchbook document in Google Docs. Do we have the slide telling you what's there? Here it is. Okay, so just go to Google Docs and make a new document. Call it Title of the Movie Sketchbook. And at the top, you want to include spaces for these 4 things. Number 1 is the title. Number 2 is the genre. So you should nail those things down first. Next after that is logline, and that is what you're going to be working on for the next 20 minutes as we prepare to write these and make these as good as we can. And the last thing are your comps, and that's the movies that you would compare yours to, perhaps in terms of the story elements or perhaps in terms of the tone or execution. You might think of it like the first one might describe the sort of action of this movie, but in the setting of the second movie. If it's if it's something like Die Hard meets the Poseidon Adventure, we might say, okay, this is going to be a one character who's trying to fight a bunch of bad guys in clever, shrewd ways, and they're on a sinking ship. Okay, we have the action of Die Hard in the setting of the Poseidon Adventure. These are ancient comps. I don't know why I'm using these comps. But you get the idea. So don't pick more than 2. You can put a bunch of ideas for comps up there, but don't pick more than 2 when you finalize them. In any case, this is what you're going to be working on at the very top of your sketchbook. And these are the things to nail down before anything else. You can continue to layer in other stuff, or you can, drag in links or videos or pictures, or start writing down ideas for things below this, but just make sure you have these 4 things at the top of the sketchbook. Any questions on this before we go on? Oh, Carmen says, should I post my sketchbook yet? I have all the beats and started the scene cards. Should I even be in this class since I'm in the Friday feature class? So yes, you should be in this class. This is an intro for the Friday feature class. So you shouldn't post the sketchbook now because this is people who are just starting on those right now. That would be like for next week. So you don't need to post it at the moment. If you feel you already know this stuff, then you don't need to stay for this whole class. But I would still, if you want to get feedback on your log line, then this might be a good one to be in, at least for another like 30 minutes. But since I know you're a boot camper, I could just call on you first if you want. But yeah, don't worry about posting the sketchbooks yet. We'll do that next week. Lizzie says, what about oh, sorry, you're good, Carmen. Lizzie says, what about a real sketchbook? If you really want to use a real sketchbook, you can. But you have to, if you want to have something to show to me and to the class and have us be able to actually see something, you should have an online version of it. So maybe write it by hand first, then write the most important stuff from your physical book into the online version so that you can link it to people and share it with them, and it's just easier to read and easier to see. Yeah, so you can write by hand if you want as well, though. Okay, so yeah, make that sketchbook, write these things at the top: title, genre, logline, and comps. And you can start filling those things out as we go. Let's look at a little more on loglines. So loglines should be your entire story distilled down to a sentence or 2. You want to imply the visual action of what we'll be watching your characters accomplishing. Or remember that movies are about people doing stuff. They're not about people sitting around and thinking about stuff or discussing stuff. There's almost no less dramatic word than people discussing something. Maybe there's a couple. But the action of your movie shouldn't seem like it's primarily going to be about people sitting around in one place doing nothing, or thinking, or completing internal processes that have no tangible goalposts. Which is why even in relationship stories, or even in stories that won't really naturally in real life always have tangible goalposts, writers will make something up. What is Little Miss Sunshine if not a movie about just a dysfunctional family kind of talking in a car and going from place to place? Well, we've added this. Their family is trying to get to this competition before it's too late. So they have a ticking clock. They have a finish line, and they have a place to go. And they also have like a grand finale kind of built into that. The contest itself becomes the grand finale. And we understand that the internal journey of these characters will be hinged over the architecture of the external journey. So we're trying to suggest stories that will be, even if they are just about people and how they relate to each other, whatever it's about, coming to terms with grief, or getting over a death, or, learning to love, or any of these things can be understood through tangible goalposts, which is why it's so essential that your story has them, and what makes something cinematic as opposed to making something novelistic is the idea that we are watching people do stuff physically do stuff in the world we can track their progress towards their goals through really clear benchmarks, and that is that's the main difference. So make sure that you are suggesting a story that feels like, okay, I can envision this whole thing because I know when that character will be done with that journey. It should that's what a tangible goalpost really tells us. So is that journey, is the healing of the family in Little Miss Sunshine is going to be hinging around and like draped over the structural supports of this external journey. We need to get from here to here, and we need to have our daughter compete in this contest. And once that's over, then the movie's over. So having that frame or that sense of walls and boundaries and goals in your story is really essential to kind of make clear in the logline. If it's like, two estranged siblings decide to fix their problems on a remote farm, then we'll be like, wait, so what are they actually trying to do, though? You should tell me two siblings need to fix up their farm before the greedy land developer buys it or whatever. Then we're like, okay, now we have urgency. Now we have a clearer, tangible journey with a set amount of time and a really clear span of criteria that are going to be determining, once that journey is finished, how do I know if they've succeeded or not? Well, they will have saved the farm or they will have not. We're looking to pitch a story that is an external journey that will intertwine with your main character's internal one, and that we will sort of imply what the internal journey is by explaining the external one. Question in the chat, what do I call my sketchbook? Just sketchbook? Yeah, well, title of your movie and sketchbook is what I call it. Okay, so what needs to go in the logline? We want to know who's the main character. Do movies have to have main characters? Yes. But what about this exception? No, they need to have main characters. Everyone can come up with exceptions for this, and there's always going to be some wiggle room here. And perhaps in some stories, we're like, well, who was really the hero of that one? But in general, the question is going to be, whose story is this? Will be one of the very first coverage and feedback questions that you get for any movie. Whose story is this, and how have we watched them change? That one person at the heart of the tale. Even if you have an ensemble, no matter how broad, often it is framed around one story for the kind of a through line. The spine of it is going to be supported by watching one person attempt to accomplish a goal and overcome obstacles on their way to it. And everything else can kind of branch out from there. You should frame your movie around a central character. Some things that are not central characters. A group of friends. A group of teenagers. A group of strangers. A couple is not a main character. A clique is not a main character. A unit in an army is not a main character. One person is your main character, and make sure that is crystal clear in your logline who that is. And also, we want to know why it's them. Why does that person have to be the one to go through this journey? How is that particular version of this journey more interesting and ironic? And how does it carry the theme? So don't worry way too much about this stuff for now. You can just have an idea of, I want to do a movie about a guy who has to save a submarine. In which case, your logline might be pretty simple to reflect that, and that's okay. Like, we'll start adding specificity and adding on layer. You know, like when you do a painting, you do the sky, then you do the buildings, then you do the trees, then you do the stuff up close. So it's like that. You're iterating and you're adding layer after layer after layer to make this as strong a logline as possible. It's not something you often can knock out of the park on just the first swing. So, who's the protagonist? What do they want? What's in their way? What happens if they fail? Those are all questions that we will have. And you can use this template to kind of answer all of those, unless, you don't have to always phrase it like this, but this is a helpful way to just make sure you're answering all the questions. So when or after the inciting incident, that's the one thing that happens that sets your story in motion. It can be a coincidence, or it might be your main character choosing to do it, but in any case, after this thing occurs, an adjective protagonist, the adjective describing your protagonist in terms that will be relevant for the story, must conflict, describing most of what they're doing in Act 2, before or in order to stakes or ticking clock. When inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. That's the simplest way to phrase this. So, excuse me. There's a lot of loglines out there that we can look at for examples of these. I think we have a great macro to just show a bunch of examples of them in the chat. Let's put that up. Are there examples in this one? Maybe not on this one. Not sure. Do we have a link that had a bunch of the... Yeah, you probably have it there. If you can find the macro that just brings up a bunch of loglines in a list for people to look at for examples, that would be great to post. Maybe I'm imagining that we had that, but I'm pretty sure we did. At least for TV, we did.
We have one for TV, for
okay.
TV series, not for features, but
we should make one for
share
a feature next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can share a PDF that has lots of them in there if that's helpful. I don't know.
Sure, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we are almost to logline sharing time. I just want to pause and take questions before I do a couple more slides giving you suggestions on the kinds of ideas that you should pick. Any questions so far? Okay, no questions so far. Let's keep going a couple more ground rules. So, no true stories, anthologies, rewrites, or adaptations. Or probably don't do a historical for the same reason that we don't want to do any of those other ones, because we don't want to do something that's going to require substantially more research to inhibit your ability to write this in just 8 weeks, because it's not super easy to write a movie in just 8 weeks, especially if you have never done this before. And the last thing you want to do is pick an idea that's going to be exponentially more difficult right off the bat. If you are absolutely attached to doing one of these, I'm not going to actually stop you or like force you to not do it, but we've done a lot of these camps at this point, and these are the guidelines for a reason. True stories, people will often feel the need to keep special adherence to the actual events that occurred, requiring lots of research and interviews and things like that. Anthologies are just several mini movies in one bigger movie, more or less, and just have their own specific rules to them, and are just not like what we'll be talking about might apply to your singular story in an anthology, but generally this is going to be easier if you try to build out your skills in writing complete feature films first. Rewrites or adaptations we have our own class for, so that is going to be the Saturday, the 25th. Time travel will be a mistake. Don't do time travel. Someone always takes this as a challenge. Someone always regrets it. We've never seen someone finish a time travel script in a script camp class. They are extraordinarily difficult, even for extremely experienced professionals, to get right and to make them totally clear, and to not have any plot holes or major dysfunctions in the logic. Or just don't do time travel, especially if it's one of your first scripts. Believe me. This is a joke rule here. No more than 2 clones, 2 montages. Those aren't really rules. It's just we start to see certain stuff that writers lean on. And, well, I guess I should say first, in terms of clones, alternate dimensions, parallel universes, or things like that where you have multiple copies of the same, body switching, anything where you have multiple copies of the same person, I encourage you to not write those, because they are very difficult to keep straight and on the page. And you're going to be focusing, especially if you're just trying to learn the fundamentals of this, you're going to be putting like 80% of your energy into stuff that you haven't even into advanced skills of distinctifying characters that you haven't even learned yet. And you're just going to write a script that we're going to struggle to even give feedback on, because every scene we're just going to be like, my main note is who in this scene. And if you have that note on every scene, you can't even get good feedback. So just probably don't write one of those things. Montages and flashbacks, don't rely on them. Unless you're constructing the whole story around those things. Let me just talk in terms of flashbacks. A lot of writers will just intersperse flashbacks all throughout any story. And it is a crutch, and it feels cheap, and it feels like it kills the pacing, and it makes the pace really drag unless you have used this kind of advanced technique of interweaving the idea of the flashbacks throughout your whole story. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you have a lot of experience with that because you read a lot of books with multiple POVs, or you're a novelist who's written stories that like jump around between different characters a lot or something like that. But for the most part, flashbacks are much harder to make work in feature films. And unless your movie is entirely based around them in some way, like think of something like American History X, which is a crime drama that is told in sort of multiple timelines, jumping back and forth throughout the entire thing. That works fine, because then it's been structured with that in mind since the very beginning. Or take a TV show like Yellow Jackets, or like Sharp Objects, which have these different distinct eras in time where it even tells us the year that we're jumping to. You know, we have like a 1992 timeline in Yellow Jackets, and we have a 2021 timeline, and we are always kind of transitioning back and forth between those throughout the whole thing. It's not just like we're using flashbacks to conveniently fill the gaps or to do anything else. So yeah, be really careful with flashbacks, and unless your whole story is based around some device using flashbacks, think, Lost or something like this, then I don't recommend messing with them too much. But this is, moreover, just a great time to take a big swing and write something wacky and crazy and fun and straightforward while building those fundamental skills. So if you don't have an idea yet, maybe think of some mashup of genres you've always wanted to see. You're like, I don't know, I love let's say, creature features, and I love aviation. Oh, maybe I'll do a movie about the helicopter pilots versus dragons, or something like that, where you're like, oh, this is something that would never really get made, and it's so out there and so, so distinctly me. Maybe you'll end up enjoying it more. You might surprise yourself, and if it's a kind of out there idea, you might be able to get more excited about it. So get used to the idea of sharing work early on with me and with all your fellow students. No one's stealing anyone's work here. They're way too busy with their own stuff to do that. And besides, students don't steal from students for the most part. So it just behooves you so much to let go of the sensitivity around your ideas. And maybe you think this isn't good enough to share, or this isn't perfect yet, or this isn't done yet. How can I possibly let anyone see this? To be a professional in Hollywood, you must entirely release those feelings. Everyone still has that to some degree, and it's understandable, but this is the kind of thing where if you're working in a writer's room, you must be able to share half-formed ideas and have somebody look at half of them and be like, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that's terrible, try again. You have to be used to hearing things be shot down and having things be reworked and having things be changed. There are many cooks in the kitchen, and you are not the only cook in the kitchen in screenwriting. The last thing is that you need to use if you want to continue in this course, you don't have to do this now for today, but if you want to be in the later ones, you must use your real name or a nickname or something that is a real name and not a screen name. You can't use screen names in the industry. Okay, let me check how we're doing on time. Great, we're almost at halfway here. Let me, we'll do like 5-10 minutes on loglines and the kinds of stuff you should be putting in the loglines and the kinds of things that we are looking for. One, we are looking for stories that have high stakes, and by high stakes we mean the highest possible stakes for the genre that you're in. So different genres have different sort of expected levels of stakes. Something like a romance story, the level of stakes are going to be, if it's really, really serious, it might be life and death, perhaps, like somebody gets an incurable illness. It might be somebody gets divorced, like divorces or breakups are often the highest stakes in romantic stories. If it's a rom-com, the highest stakes will probably be, breakup, or the main character loses the person they thought was the one. They're probably not going to die if it's a lighthearted comedy, though. And if it's a horror film, the stakes pretty much have to be life and death, unless you have something way worse or way more intense than that. If it's a thriller, they must be high. They don't have to necessarily be life and death, but most thrillers will escalate to life and death by the end. If it's a buddy comedy, the friendship is going to be at the core of the stakes. The friendship of the main characters must be tested and must be endangered, perhaps. Look for the things that the main characters care about and the gravity of their goals. That's going to determine the stakes. We're looking for primal things that anyone can kind of understand. Love, friendship, life and death, revenge, things like this that will transcend cultures. Belonging, understanding. All these things are going to be key for the level of stakes. We need to make sure the stakes are as high as they can be for the type of thing that you're writing. We need a logline, or we want a logline that is going to imply the size of the story, so something that's going to not seem like it's going to be a series of repeatable situations like 5 friends live together in the Midwest. Okay, so what do they get up to? Well, different stuff every episode. That's not a film logline. That's a TV logline for a status quo-based sitcom type show, which is not what we're doing. A movie is a story that can only happen one way, in one particular, to this one particular person, and only in this one, instance could this have happened like this. And movies are not a series of situations that will then happen again next week, and then next week, and then next week, most of the time. There are some minor exceptions to that, but often a movie is the most important event in your main characters' lives. And that means that this will be like the formative moment for them that we sort of understand is going to make them who they are truly sort of meant to be from now on. They're going to become like the perfect version of themselves. Whether or not they live or die, like the quote, perfect version of them might be someone who refused to learn the lesson and got punished and died as a result. Or it might be someone who finally did come to understand the truth of what they've been missing the whole time, but then at the very end they're struck with tragedy and they lose regardless. It might be something like that, but in any case, we're looking for one person's singular journey that is supported by interesting external events that we can hinge that internal journey around. Too small might be better suited for a web series or for a comedy sketch or for a one-act play or for a short story or a webcomic or something like that. It just doesn't feel like it's going to support 35 to 55 scenes of escalating material, meaning escalating in challenge and difficulty and scale. So usually the expectation is over the course of the story, it's getting more and more difficult for your main character, and by the end they will face up with the most difficult challenge of all, and they will overcome or be overcome by that, and they will either, conquer this obstacle or have it conquer them. So what do we want in a logline? We want movies that seem visual and dynamic and about people doing stuff, not about people sitting around coming to terms with things or thinking about things. It should be clear what we will be actually watching your main character do on screen for 90 minutes. Your story should imply that this action is going to be tracked through tangible goalposts, which I've mentioned before, but it's as simply defined as the things that your main character needs to do, that after they do that, we will understand that they have accomplished their goal, or that they have failed at it. You can have a tangible goalpost. A ticking clock is essentially the inverse, where if they don't accomplish their goal by this time, or if they fail to deal with this obstacle, then the Death Star is going to blow up the Rebel base, or whatever it is. And that's the consequence for them not accomplishing their goal. That's what's going to create a sense of urgency and immediacy, is the idea of, we need to accomplish this now, or something very bad will happen. Some very tangibly defined bad thing will happen to your main character. We should know what is going to happen if they fail. That is what's going to determine the stakes. I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions, and then I might go... I don't think I have a slide on genres, film genres. I think I want to just touch on that really quick. But let me ask if we have questions so far, and let me scroll through the chat really quick and see if we have any that have come up. VJ Rain says, this is a script sample and doesn't have any explanations on the lingos being used, sketchbook, logline, etc. Oh yeah, that would be because that link there does not go to one of our documents, that's going to an Academy document. But we can define anything that you're not clear on here. The logline is not our proprietary term. I don't know how many people are calling these things sketchbooks. That's just a me thing. But yeah, the logline is going to be just that one sentence expression of your premise, or of your story idea. That's the most important thing to work on right now. Other questions?
Okay, I think I'm seeing a problem with my logline based on what you described for the horror genre.
Okay.
The stakes in particular. I'll just wait until we get to the logline.
Yeah. Just give us like 10 minutes and we'll be good to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. Other questions about loglines and the kinds of things that make good loglines, or the things that you're not sure if they'll work in a logline or anything like that? And we've done several logline workshops with great recordings of them with guest instructors. So if you're still wondering how on earth do I write a logline, then we will have some links for you here. Nacho, can you link the workshop with Scott, the logline workshop with Scott from the pitch course? And then we have several other. They're
That
like 2 hours
one's
long. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's only available for subscribers.
Oh, it is? I was pretty sure the week one was public.
The first one? Oh yeah, okay. Let me find that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Anyway, we have another one from last year as well that we can link from, that was run on Screenwriters Network. Let me go grab my water bottle, and then I want to just talk about genres for like 5-10 minutes, and then we'll be looking at student loglines. Okay, I don't even think I have a slide on this. I'm gonna find one right now. Genre. Let's look at film genre. And let's put a big old image right here. Here's a bunch of here's like a sort of graphic that I've seen this before. This is film genre popularity over time. So it's kind of interesting to see if you haven't seen this before. We start in 1918. We're 1910, which is essentially the start of cinema. And you can see how things spike in popularity or go down over the years, and you can even sort of figure out where some of these things are coming from. Like, for instance, why do you think so many action films came out in the late 30s, early 40s? Well, there was World War II was going on, so maybe there was an increased interest in war-type material, or maybe, you can sort of come up with different ideas. Like, I'm sure on sci-fi, maybe the space race really elevated interest. Look, in the 50s, there's a huge spike up in the middle, which is probably due to the idea of the space race and landing on the moon and stuff like that. People probably became interested in sci-fi. You see a spike in crime films around, like, I don't know, Prohibition, for instance. You also see a spike. Comedy is nice because people like comedy when they're sad, and people also want to see comedy when they're happy. It's like drinking, right? It's like alcohol. It's so recession-proof. What do people do when they're happy? They drink. They celebrate. What do people do when they're sad? They also drink. The only time you don't drink is when you don't want to just laugh. The only time you don't want to laugh at stuff, or when you're, you know, doing something else. I don't quite know, but you see the idea that there's many different genres on here, and I think we all have some ideas of what genres are. Does somebody want to just define what is genre for us really quick in your own words? It doesn't have to be super academic or anything.
I think it's just generally a category for a group of stories that are similar. That's all. Often they're stories that are all based on one another. So like Agatha Christie mysteries are based on the mysteries that came before it, and every mystery afterwards is sort of based on Agatha Christie. So that's a genre. Anyway, that's what I think it is. It's sort of a trace of something's intellectual lineage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Are we saying that all mysteries are based on Agatha Christie and none of them sort of take from... I mean, we've forgotten Holmes, for goodness sakes. But like, for instance, yeah, you're right. Sometimes a genre is straight up created. It's a little bit unusual nowadays just because more often than not, what we come up with now are subgenres. So you might say like the locked room mystery, for instance, might be sort of the subgenre that Agatha Christie like perfected. And yeah, new subgenres are sort of emerging all the time. Art house horror was like, you know, less of a thing until people like David Lynch and A24 really pushed that, and so like you could even create your own subgenre if you wanted to. But the point is, yeah, you're totally right. It's a collection of tropes and expectations, and just the plot. Like it's a combination of everything from plot lines, imagery, character archetypes that just a certain subset of stories have in common, and that have been built up over time in the sort of literary canon. Now, there's all kinds of genres. There's genres of things that are not fiction as well. I mean, genre pertains to different types of nonfiction, even different types of documentaries. There's different types of all kinds of media, I guess we should say. And the main thing we should be thinking of when it comes to movie genre is the kind of experience that each genre is promising, because that's what the audience is ultimately coming for, and the biggest determiner of if you're doing your job or not is if they're feeling that thing. So genre, as far as I define it, is very linked to emotion. Let's go down these genres and you'll tell me what is the primary emotion that they are attempting to entertain us with. Let's start in the top left. Action. And we can also say war a little bit too. Action and war. How are we trying to entertain the audience? With what emotion? Bridget says tension and excitement. Monica asks, is power an emotion? I don't think power is an emotion. We might say that in Elemental, you're sort of talking about the idea of like a power fantasy. Like an audience likes to imagine, what if I was strong in that way? Perhaps that kind of makes sense. I could see that. Alien Boy says excitement, tension, and adrenaline. Yep, you guys are all totally right. If we had to distinguish war, how would we say, what is the emotional experience that most war films are offering that a lot of what we would call just straight action are not? What's something you get from war that you typically don't get as much from in other action films? Alien Boy says tension. No, we get a lot of tension in all action films, I would say. Amanda says shock horror, maybe shock horror, perhaps a little bit more horror in war, and especially if we look at something like 1917, which has borderline horror sequences. Somebody, go ahead. Somebody just said something. Sentiment. I would think that you might be on to what I'm getting at here. Catharsis and grief, Monica said. Yeah, tragedy, sentiment, catharsis, and grief. And Bridget says fear. So maybe there might be lots of fear in a regular action, but perhaps, yeah, we're trying to put ourselves usually in the shoes of characters who are in more realistic action-based scenarios. So yeah, there is a bit more fear. Morgana says perhaps introspection. Yeah, maybe introspection. All these things are going to be a unique promise of that subgenre of action, right? So I think we all have an idea of what makes these different genres tick. You just need to make sure, beyond all shadow of a doubt, that you are delivering on that emotional experience in your specific thing. So if you're like, I'm going to do a war movie, but I don't care about sentiment or tragedy, then you're going to end up with a war film that feels very pro-war is awesome, kick-ass action heroes saving the day kind of thing, which, you know, it's not impossible to make that work, but culture changes over time, and the things that we've seen before, the things that ring false, they shift. What's next? Romance. What emotional experience are you attempting to entertain the audience with a romance story? Bridget says love. Okay. I would say to some extent, would you say, and I'm not a big consumer of this media myself, but I've seen many things with romances in them, but to some extent, wouldn't you say we're trying to sort of replicate the experience of the audience is falling in love with the love interest in the same way that our main character is, because we sort of see the flaws that they have and their different thorns that are going to be poking our main character, but we're supposed to, along with the main character, feel like we could kind of fall in love with them too, and it has that wish fulfillment element to it for the most part, unless you're doing really tragic romance where we're like, oh god, they're not right, unless we're, you know, it's like Blue Valentine or something where it's like, these people need to just break up already, just stop fighting. But that's not usual for that genre. The genre is usually based on the positive experience of you're falling in love with someone who, you know, patches some hole in you. Monica says romance captures longing better than anything else. Yes, so you're hoping for someone that will fill the gaps in your soul or whatever and make you feel as if you are now complete and fulfilled. And yeah, if we're going to break down genres to the most basic, the first genres that were ever a thing, romance and horror are going to be at the heart of who we are entirely as a species, because one of them says we will have children, one of them says we will survive. That's something everyone can relate to. How about musicals? What emotional experience are we trying to entertain the audience with in musicals? And this does vary a bit. There, of course, we know there are different subgenres and different tones of musical, and musical on its own is only really a genre insofar as it determines we will have people singing and dancing. But what in general are we trying to entertain the audience with through a musical? Joy, perhaps. If it's a happy, upbeat musical, if we're watching Les Mis, it may not be joy, but there is a certain inherent joy, you could argue, in just entertaining songs, whether or not they're happy or sad. There is just sort of, I don't know what you would quite call that emotion necessarily, but there is a certain contentment in hearing awesome music, whether or not the tone of it is joyful or tragic. Elevation, says Amanda. Yeah, sure, maybe that's a good term for it. Monica says musicals convey a totally different reality where everyone's a professional singer and dancer, wherein every emotion is enhanced. That is, great nuance in that answer there. How about horror? What emotion are we trying to entertain people with in horror, and why would that entertain them? Isn't horror a negative feeling? Amanda says curiosity and thrills. Sure, yeah, there might be a mystery element in horror, so we have to piece together what is this monster, where did it come from, how do we beat it. Thrills like roller coaster style thrills where you're on the edge of your seat, definitely. Monica says horror is about taboo and discussing things we dare not imagine by ourselves. Sure. Yep, so in terms of subject matter, we can delve into darker topics than we can in any other genre by far. Suspense, yep, sure. Dread, tension, these things are all great. Yep, these are things that in real life we don't really want to feel those things. Just like we don't want to have our tongue hurt, but we still like spicy food because spicy food does make our tongue hurt in a controlled and little way. We like scary movies for the same reason that we like spicy food. It's because we crave pain in small doses. We crave controllable amounts of pain because it makes us feel better about being alive. Monica says vulnerability. Yeah, exactly. The vulnerability is a big part of not just horror, but also like crime media as well. Crime and true crime, they really thrive on this. You relate to the character more because they're the most possible vulnerable. They're the most vulnerable they can possibly be in that situation, I should say. And thrillers are going to have a lot of the same appeal. Obviously, they don't always delve the deepest depths of the human experience, but they definitely can. Thriller can be just a lot of things. It's an extremely versatile genre. But we'll have similar appeals of, suspense and tension and dread and all these things. Pulse-pounding excitement. What about sci-fi? Is there an emotional promise with sci-fi? Intrigue, okay. Monica says sci-fi is every other genre in another universe. Nacho says depends on subgenre. Alien Boy says wonder and awe. Okay, I think you are onto this. Good job, Alien Boy. So the thing that we are going for in sci-fi and also fantasy are going to be wonder and awe is going to be a big part of them, because we're presenting our audience with ideas, technologies, innovations, or just over the top extrapolations of where technology is going that are going to entertain us, because we're just like, that's so cool, or that's so scary. So yeah, wonder and awe, a big part of it. I think with sci-fi there's also, and intrigue is sure another good way of putting that, Amanda. And I think there's one more thing we're looking for in sci-fi than any other genre. It's not really an emotional experience, but a certain intellectual one. Can you guys take a swing at what that might be? Is there some promise built into sci-fi that is especially apparent in this genre compared to the other ones?
Just the consideration of a possibility that you've never considered, maybe?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, we're gonna make you think about the world, about society, about technology, about humanity. We're gonna make you think about these topics in a different way by presenting you with something you've never seen before, or some version of it that you've never seen before, or it being used in a different way. Yeah, definitely. So that is something you are suggesting, that you will have a certain cerebral interest in your movie. You will have a puzzle at the heart of it, something to make you rethink some aspect of life. That is inherently built into sci-fi by far. Let's go to our last ones here. How about, I think crime is often going to be either thrillers or dramas, so they're going to have, is there no drama on here? Why is there no drama listing? It's kind of weird. Anyway, but yeah, crime is going to be thrillers or dramas for the most part. Comedy, I think we know what the emotional experience for that is. We want to be happy. We want to be laughing as much as possible. It's impossible for someone to be having a bad time if they're laughing a lot, unless they're really faking it. But it's tough to. No one's going to keep faking it for more than 5 minutes. So if the audience is laughing, they're having a good time without exception. Documentary, I think we know is not really a fiction genre, so we don't have to talk about it. But it does have that same sort of implication that sci-fi does, that we're going to make you take some issue in real life and make you think about it in a different way. But instead of speculating on how things could go, we're going to take something that did happen and make you rethink something about life by framing that event. And how about this last one? How about fantasy? What genre expectation, or what emotional experience are we attempting to deliver to the audience in fantasy? We have some answers in the chat. Lizzie says excitement. Yep, wonder and awe is going to be the big one. And anything else?
Escape from reality?
Sure, escapism. We want to see something different than real life that we have never seen before. So sci-fi, if we're going to split those up, sci-fi is going to be more on the end. If we're going to look at what both of them do, because both of them can do both of these things of wonder and awe, and also intellectual questions that make you rethink parts of real life. But if, sci-fi is more erring on the side of intellectual questions, and fantasy is more erring on the side of wonder and awe. Okay, so hopefully we all have an idea of what your own genre is and the kinds of expectations that come with that, because we're going to post log lines now, and you should include title, genre, comps if you have them. So remember, this movie meets that movie, no more than 2 different movies. If you don't have them, it's okay, we can help you pick them. But title, genre, and one sentence that tells us, remember the main things that we're trying to answer. When inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict, before, or else stakes. Should look kind of like this if you're not sure what else it should look like. Let's post some log lines, and let's spend this last part of class going over them. Thank you, Monica. So if you've already posted a logline before now in the chat, make sure to repost it now just so we keep them all in the same place. Thank you, Carmen. And once we get one more posted, then we'll start reviewing these, and I'm going to put them up in a Google Drive file so we can mark them up. And you should be prepared to unmute and answer questions about your idea. Be prepared to hear something is not working about this, and don't freak out if you hear that. That's why we pick ideas that we are ready to receive feedback on, and early on we should be working on this skill of receiving feedback. So today is a good time to work on this. All right, we've got a bunch in the chat now. Thank you so much for these. Bridget says,
Real,
go ahead.
I don't mean to step over you. I'm just trying to figure out which chat with this are you looking to have submissions go into?
It's called Feature Class. You can find it on the left hand of your Discord window if you scroll down to the bottom of the discussion folder. So go past where it says Suggestion Box, Discord Help, Website Help. Under that, right above the General Chat, you should find Feature Class.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bridget says, what if you have two versions? If they're really similar, probably just post one. If they're significantly different, you can post them both, but try not to post more than 3 different ones, or else it's going to be tough to give good feedback. Okay, let's start with Carmen, like I said I would. Carmen, you want to read this out for us?
Okay, let's see. I'm sorry, kind of disheveled here. When a skeptical ghost tour guide becomes a primary suspect in a series of ritual killings, he must put a stop to the human sacrifices before city officials shut him down. So I was thinking, based on what you were saying, Connor, I was thinking about what you were saying. That can't possibly be the worst thing that could happen. His business getting shut down, right?
Well, the expectation for something like this would be that this would be the kind of story where he starts off with the goal of trying to save his business or whatever, but then very early on...
Ready? Let's go.
Sorry, too many...
We about to go.
Too many people talking at once. I think someone might have accidentally unmuted there. Not sure what just happened at the moment. So you can totally do the story where they start off with one goal that then pulls them into a sort of world of horror and intrigue that is going to threaten their life by the end of it. But you should clarify that in the logline, that, like, but he starts investigating this, and soon he finds himself pursued by this specific thing that is going to kill him unless he does this specific thing. So just try to make sure it seems like it escalates to a point of really, intense life and death stakes. A story can start like a guy's just trying to clean his basement, but then it turns out there's a monster in the basement, and now his goal is really not to clean the basement anymore, it's to escape. So that should just be really evident how it develops like that in the logline.
Okay, great.
So let's take a look. A skeptical ghost tour guide becomes the primary suspect in a series of ritual killings. He must put a stop to the sacrifices before city officials shut his business down permanently. Yeah, I guess just the bigger note that I would have, more important than what we were just talking about, is the fact that a guy is endangering his own life to the extent that he is trying to catch a serial killer just to keep his business afloat. It does feel a little bit of a stretch that a person would feel the need to do that and not say, like, well, the police will handle it. I mean, in some circumstances I might be able to buy that someone would do this, but a guy's trying to keep a ghost tour business afloat and he feels the best way to do that is to risk his life hunting a serial killer? Are you serious? Like, that feels like a horror comedy to me rather than serious horror. Make sense?
I was thinking that it seems kind of comedic, but he's not actually trying to stop it's not about a serial killer. It's actually there's a building. It's a neo-Aztec inspired building, and the gods that are he doesn't realize this at the time, that this building has a lot of power, and that these powers come from these practices from the Aztec culture, and his love interest is actually slated to be sacrificed on top of the building, actually on top of the calendar by her own parents. So it's not a serial killer type thing.
It's a cult?
I guess you could say it's a cult.
What else would you call it?
I have all of the I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just asking, what else would you call it, if not a group of religious fanatics who are committing a sacrifice?
Right. And this is actually, like a historical thing. I've done a lot of research. I actually took a tour of this building this past weekend, and that's where I got the idea from. I've written the bullet point list. In my mind, it all seems to make sense, of course, right? Mm-hmm. And the story goes forward. I have the ending and everything, and but I do understand about rewriting the stakes part, but then also considering what you're saying now about, there's these people are getting their hearts pulled out of their chests, and he's he is he's worried about he's about to get evicted out of his apartment. He has a conflicted relationship with his father. His father doesn't think he's going to amount to much, and he doesn't want to leave San Francisco. He really loves San Francisco, and I don't want to write comedy horror. I'm not a fan of that.
Okay. In that case,
Have you
go ahead.
have you seen where a person is just not a fan of a genre, but for some reason they're able to write in that genre? Have you ever seen that before?
No.
Or no?
Have you?
Okay. Yeah, that's not my.
I don't think any of us have seen that before. I mean, maybe there's some weird circumstance where that would be the case, but for the most part, I'm not sure why you would write something you weren't a fan of.
Yeah. So, so I kind of am, it's a toss up between three different things right now that I'm looking at with these sketchbooks. I've got the Yellow River, and then also the Last Laying Hen. And I've tried to, with the Yellow River, I've gone all the way through the scene cards, 80
okay,
minutes,
okay.
80 minutes into it. So I'm wondering but there's still some things that are kind of missing from there that I wanted to thread through. So I have to go back and say, okay, this is where I want to place this,
Yeah, you can definitely bring that to lab. I think just to make sure we get through all the log lines today, I just want to break down your feedback to 3 main points for the moment before we move on. But yeah, bring that other stuff to lab on Saturday if you want to work on that more. I'd be glad to do so. But so just to boil down the key points here, the hook in horror is the threat. It's the villain. It's the monster. It's the cult. It's the killer. You don't actually specify what it is here. You just say he just has to put a stop to human sacrifices. I assumed serial killer because that's often a person doing ritual sacrifices in a story like this. But you should specify if it's a cult that worships Hephaestus versus it's a guy named Rick who has a big knife. We want to know what the threat of the movie actually is. You should extrapolate how the stakes are going to develop and raise over the course of this, and it should feel like his life is becoming more endangered the more embroiled he gets in it. And lastly, if you can amp up the protagonist's engagement beyond just he's saving his business, then or either that or explain how quickly soon into the investigation he ends up way over his head and now his life is on the line. So the goal for the movie isn't save the business, the goal for the movie is escape and survive. So yeah,
right.
amp up the protagonist, like the stakes of his goal, and explain how this is going to develop and specify the threat.
Okay. I'll work on this.
Great. Thanks so much, Carmen.
Thank you.
Let's go to our next one. We have a bunch to we'll go quicker. Sorry it took so long the first one. Let's go to Monica. We have Siren Vampires in Creepy Forest, the movie. It's almost like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. What is it? Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie film for theaters. Are you there, Monica?
Right here. Yeah, I didn't have a good title for this. I always feel like I spend like 20 minutes thinking on titles, so I just write what I think it is, and I will come up with something else later.
Okay, that's all good. Why don't you read this out for us?
Okay. For generations, women have vanished into a mysterious wilderness drawn by a mesmeric song. When our heroine's partner vanishes into the forest, she must reunite with her estranged father, hunt the culprit, and rescue her love.
Nice. Okay, this is sounding pretty good. So your comps are with this being the Hammer horror movie from this is what 2006 or 7 when that came out. Am I thinking of the right movie?
Yeah, I think 2010, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Around then.
Yeah. That was actually a pretty good one. That was definitely overlooked. I don't think a ton of people will know it, but for the horror world, you can use it. 70s lesbian vampire schlock, sure. Okay, for generations, women. So the logline for your movie doesn't seem congruous with the tone that you've sort of set up in the title and comps to me. This doesn't sound like a lesbian vampire schlock movie as much as it does an A24 horror movie in the logline. Wouldn't you agree?
A24, I don't know the reference.
A24, that the distribution company behind movies like Midsummer, Hereditary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like sort of art house.
Yeah, so it has this like indie horror, cerebral horror kind of feel, but the titles are all like, this is going to be silly and full of blood.
Oh, okay. So maybe the comp you want is not 70s Vampire Schlock, but maybe something like Mandy?
Yeah. Or maybe, have you seen May?
I know of it. I have not actually seen it, but I'm familiar with the filmmakers, and yeah, that might be a good one to do. If you want to do trippy, crazy, over the top horror, then Mandy is one that a lot of people will know because it was a huge hit in the sort of world that we're talking about, and people will just know what you mean. People might not know May as much, but you might be able to use that. So the logline is quite well written. I think you could do this in one sentence, I should say. Women have vanished into a mysterious wilderness. This is set on Earth, right? So maybe you can
regular Earth.
The location.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So I could say, instead of a mysterious wilderness, I could say the Canadian wilderness. Canada makes horror movies.
Sure. If this might give us a sense, is this folk horror, would you say? So is this going to be linked to the either beliefs or folk practices of a specific group?
I would think so. I think the idea, especially with the Wakewood analogy, in my mind, I was trying to think of how to do like a lesbian vampire movie in the now times that isn't like this kind of weird morality play about drawing straight girls into sin, but is just like a lesbian vampire movie. So the idea is just that we have these singing vampire chicks that will sing like a siren song and call to them a victim that will go out into the wilderness, and then finding them is a matter of like Blair Witching or Wakewooding your way through the forest to find the mysterious place where these things live. And I think the townspeople are just accepting that this is something that happens because they don't want to disturb the supernatural force.
Sure, I'm with you. I think the only things we're going to need here are more specificity. So more specific setting, because if this is going to be related to, if we're talking like, Canadian Inuit folklore and things like that, then we want to know that in the logline, because that's going to suggest the environment and specific games that we'll be playing in this. We want to know who is, you just say our heroine, which doesn't really tell us anything about her. So you're going to want to give us a strong adjective and make it clear, like, why does this person have to be the one to go on this journey? Is she someone from this community? Is she someone who left this community? Like, find what is the internal journey that we're implying here. You say she has to reunite with her estranged father. I'm more or less with you, but I think if we had a little more about the main character, we would understand why that. Like, if it was that she left this community and now that caused that division, now she has to return and team up with the dad to find her. You say partner, but partner can mean multiple things. I'm pretty sure you mean romantic partner.
Yes, I come from an era where we didn't say wife because it wasn't legal, so I suppose I should just say wife.
Oh, they're actually married?
Oh, I hadn't considered it that way. Yes, they are partners. They are like, living together.
I would say wife for sure then. People are going to assume
wife.
you mean police partner.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's 2022, Jesse. Come on.
I know. But yeah, so change that to wife just so that the relationship is clear there. She vanishes into the forest. Okay. More specific with the setting, and give us more on the main character to imply that internal journey a bit more.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Good? All right. Thanks, Monica. Let's keep going. Bridget, Live to Tell.
Yes.
Can you read that up?
So I have two versions.
Go ahead.
Yep. So as bodies keep turning up, a paranoid mystery writer races to find the killer alongside an unstable coroner before she becomes his next victim. Is one.
Okay, yeah. I remember you had another. Did you post the other one too? Yeah, you did, didn't you? Here it
I
is.
did. Yeah. After people keep dying at an alarming rate, a paranoid writer teams up with an unstable coroner to try to prove her husband's esteemed doctor mentor is really a cold-blooded killer.
Okay, that's the one you should go with. But let's look at the specifics of this a little bit. After people keep dying at an alarming rate is not an event. You need to say something like, make this sound like it's one thing occurring. After a string of murders racks a local community. You see what I mean? Like, frame this around one event and not after people keep dying. That's like, at what point in the string of deaths did this actually occur? So it just raises ambiguity as to the actual timeline if it's phrased like this. A paranoid writer teams up with an unstable coroner to try to prove who's her?
The writer.
The writer. Okay, so you see how there's pronoun confusion if you list two people and either one could be female, and then you say her, then we're like, wait, which one? To try to prove her husband's esteemed doctor mentor. Her husband's esteemed doctor mentor
It's a lot.
is really a cold-blooded killer. Why does a writer have to do that? I guess you're implying that the husband will be one of the next targets.
Yes, she believes that. And she's a mystery writer, so she likes solving mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of her jam. So, but she's also kind of like, is she making all this up because she's a mystery writer? Or is he really a killer?
I mean, is there a question as to her trustworthiness or sanity?
Yes, she's unstable. Yes.
You might want to include that.
And the corner's unstable, so I kept it to the corner.
Right. Okay. Everyone's unstable, I guess. Okay. So this is pretty much working. So I'm just going to include inciting incident should be one distinct event. A paranoid writer teams up with an unstable coroner. Why this team up, I guess?
So she doesn't so her husband doesn't become the next victim, or she doesn't become the next victim.
Sure, I understand, I guess, why she's trying to do it, but why is she teaming up with this guy?
He's sort of fueling the idea in her head. Like, he believes it, so she relies on him to help her prove it.
Okay, so she just shares her theory with him, and he thinks that sounds reasonable?
Yeah, or vice versa. Like, he shares the theory with her, and she believes it.
Is he like a fan of her books or something?
No, he is the coroner taking care of all the bodies that keep turning up. So he forms a theory, and she meets him because she's doing research for her book.
Gotcha. Okay. So
and she's also been placed in like small town USA, so she has nothing else to do. She doesn't know anyone, and he's the first person she meets while her husband's doing his residency.
Okay. So my notes for you will be: 1, inciting incident should be one distinct event. 2, why this team up specifies. So you might want to, if there is something else there saying why these two are going to be the ones that make this partnership to solve this crime, then you might want to just be a little clearer there. And last, you might want to spell out the stakes directly, which are before her husband gets murdered or becomes the next victim, then she has to stop this killer before then.
Okay.
So I think this is largely working there. Largely working, though. Did you have any questions about this one?
No, I'm happy that it's largely working.
Cool. Yeah, keep it up. I think that you're in good shape with this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. Let's keep going. Morgana, brutally normal.
I think Simone is actually above me for now. Oh wait.
Really?
Yeah. That's like I have 2. So Simone.
I see. That's... My bad. I scrolled down a little too far.
Mine is. I'm sorry, it was a mix-up with mine. I don't know if that. It was that. It was one thing. Never mind. Just go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Let's do Simone's next, and then we'll try to get to everyone. I might stay a few minutes late, even if we need to get to every last one. So don't worry too much about the order. Go ahead, Simone. We'll do. Keep it in the closets.
Thriller, romance, drama, mysterious, weary world traveler moves into the bedroom closet of his new apartment and quickly gets mixed up in his recently separated female neighbor's dangerous romantic past that continues to haunt her.
All right, thanks for this. Recently separated female neighbor's dangerous romantic past. Oof, that's a lot of words to clarify what that means.
I know.
A mysterious, weary world. You mean world weary, perhaps? World weary traveler. Traveler moves into the bedroom closet of his new apartment. What does that mean? He moves his bed in there?
Yeah, he's eccentric.
Okay. Why are we describing him as a traveler if the whole script he's in this apartment?
Well, I mean, he was a as a weary world traveler. I think is better to say because he's traveled the world. He's tired. He's finally trying to settle down, and he gets an apartment.
Oh, so this is
But
saying like after he finishes his travels, basically.
yeah, he's kind
Okay.
of finished. He might go back. Right now, he's like, oh my God, I need to settle somewhere.
Okay, so you might
So
want to
yeah,
phrase this more like after returning from, a long trip around the world, something like that.
okay.
Um, I'm just describing him as a traveler is a slightly strange way to do that. Anyone can travel, and traveling is not a job. So we might say after returning from a long trip around the world, an explorer or something like that. Whatever his actual title is. So just maybe like clarify his role. He moves into the bedroom closet of his new apartment. Is that what causes him to get mixed up in his neighbor's past?
No, no, it's just the eccentricness of him. I mean, I'm trying to come up with some type of way. Eventually, that'll work itself out. But no, what causes it is she. Well, I don't know if I should be saying what she's gonna do, but she.
Yeah, you can say.
Okay, and she'll come to his door. She's asking for sugar, something simple like that. And he's like, "Well, I don't have any. I just moved in. Try next week." Something funny like that. So he leaves, but then he hears a thump, and he comes out and he sees her being dragged down the hallway.
Okay.
So it's something to that effect. So I don't want to go too far into it, but there's a lot more coming in. Yeah. So it's like yeah.
Okay. So the problem is that then it doesn't. Then it kind of breaks your logline if this isn't actually the cause. And it sounds like you're saying there is cause and effect here. A guy moves into his closet and gets mixed up in his neighbor's past. It makes it sound like you're saying first he moves into his closet, and as a result of that, gets involved in his neighbor's past. But that's actually not the case at all.
No.
Your inciting incident is when he notices his neighbor being dragged away or kidnapped. An eccentric man decides to help her, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
But try to make it clear why he has to do that. Like, did he have some kind of relationship with her? Did he know her? Like, why would he feel the need to put his life in danger to save her?
Yeah. I'd say no, he doesn't know her at all, but he's just one of those, hey, what are you doing? Interferes, that guy, that wants to help whoever the victim is. So yeah.
But normally that person won't go to the end of the earth to investigate and track down the kidnapping victim and stuff like that, right? I think that, like we were mentioning in the previous horror logline, if it's going to be the type of story where he gets involved at first just trying to help, but then you need to increase the stakes, it might be like he gets in over his head, now he's being hunted too, something like that, which means that he can't extricate himself now. So you're going to want to clarify that in the logline.
Female neighbor's dangerous foolishness. So that's why I put that in there, because he's getting mixed up in that now due to getting involved and trying to help him. So
okay, so then it should be something like when he witnesses his neighbor being kidnapped, an eccentric man sets out to rescue her and soon finds himself in over his head with his life on the line. Something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right. And maybe a line on the villain. So when he notices his neighbor being kidnapped by, the Romanian mafia, then an eccentric, see what I mean? Just clarify who we're going up against a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice work here. I think we have a bunch of feedback for you to use there. So hope that's helpful. Thank you for this. Let's keep on going. Do we have Morgana next? Go ahead, Morgana.
Yeah, so I have two, and this is the first one. It's called Open Mic, and the logline.
Sorry to cut you off, but just in terms in interest of time, maybe just pick your favorite. Is this the one? If you could only do one, would this be the one?
Yeah, I guess so. Someone I just came up with. So, all right. So, in 1980s New York, a shy, comedy-obsessed teenager struggles to develop the perfect stand-up set in time for his high school talent show.
Okay. And it's called Open Mic. Is his name Mike, perhaps?
Yes.
Okay. And comps are Almost Famous. Okay, so this is like a Christopher Guest kind of. Is this a mockumentary?
Well, no. Almost Famous is it's Cameron Crowe, I think, wrote it. It's it's about this a kid, 15-year-old kid writes a Rolling Stone article in the 70s, rock and roll band, and he travels and sees except this would be set in New York, and the '80s comedy boom, and he'd see like Sam Kinison and all the Jerry Seinfeld and all the like. He would mention those guys, and that's what I'm going for.
I see. Okay, so you have the fundamentals here. This sounds like a story, and it does sound like a story we've seen many versions of before. So that's where the specificity is going to come in, and I think you just need to find what's going to make this unique and engaging and something that only you could write in this way. So whether that means that there's an essential relationship here that's really going to galvanize the story, like he needs a mentor to help him overcome his stage fright, perhaps. It's the popular girl at school. Okay, there's a really clear conflict and set of intertwining interests there. Maybe a love interest, maybe a villain, maybe someone he's trying to get is he struggling with his relationship with his parents? Like, just find some other point of central relationship which will help us picture the story, because right now a lot of people will be able to picture the general thrust of this, but to the extent that they're like, yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah.
So this is a teen competition movie. You're building up to the Battle of the Bands, or that kind of thing. There's not going to be a team-up element because stand-up is so solo. So give us a clearer picture of what we're going to actually be watching the character do in the movie. Like, what specific challenges might he have to overcome? Is there a road trip he has to go on? Is there a mentor he has to win over? Is there a rivalry that he develops with another comedian? I'm just going to say, like, specificity and conflict. And specificity of conflict.
Yeah, I was going for like a mentor situation where like he'd go find an older kind of like failed comic who would kind of help him. He'd like go throughout New York City trying to, he would start off not because this is like I've done this before. He would fail at first and that sort of thing, and like a guy would help him. So that's what I'm kind of going for.
Sure. Yeah, mention that needs to come up in the logline then. Then that's going to be like one of the main things that's going to set your story apart. If he has to team up with a washed-up professional comic, or maybe it's whoever it is, like that dynamic is going to carry the story, and that's where we have to understand a good amount of conflict has to come from.
Yep.
Cool. But yeah, I mean the groundwork is there. You have the tangible goalpost, you have the specific character tactic and obstacle, and almost everything's there except for we're looking for the spice. We're looking for the oomph. That last layer of. We have a functioning story, but we're looking for that's a story I have to read.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for this. Hope that was helpful. Smash Guy, we've got Flutter. Go ahead. Feel free to read this out.
Yeah. The log line I have is a stargazing butterfly sets off on an adventure to find a new source of energy. For his colony, but is hindered by a power-hungry hornet that needs him to fail.
Okay, this is an animated movie. A stargazing butterfly sets off on an adventure to find a new energy source for his colony. So, the inciting incident, I'm guessing, is his colony's energy source fails. Is that right?
It's more or less, there's like there's more of a drought going on, so availability of nectar just isn't there. And initially, when I was thinking about this log line, because a lot of it has to do with this this specific mirage of very hardy flowers, for example, that can kind of withstand itself. So he's out to kind of find that source of energy, and it takes he kind of takes this journey from the different areas. Like, it's primarily through like an estuary, and then it's if that makes sense, of course. It's there's a lot more I could really go into it. But
that's okay. I mean, I don't know if you need to be super specific about the environment that we're going through, just because I think we get what the gist of the set pieces and adventures will be. We have a little butterfly in a big world full of dangers, like we've seen in A Bug's Life and Ants and all these things like that. So I think we can picture what the set pieces will be. My question is, why does a hornet need him to fail? Is that's like the villain of the movie you're saying?
Yeah. So there's like there's more of a political aspect in this movie as well. She's been chosen as this heir to the throne, and a lot of it has been due to decisions that are intentionally hindering this community for self gain, and ultimately he sees through the charade. He's more, I would say, the steadfast protagonist that everybody kind of changes around this particular character as the story goes on. Um, whether it's the people he meets on this journey or kind of the people that are at home and are aware that he of what he's doing for the most part.
So the it sounds like you're saying that the antagonist is just a single Hornet, but the comps that you've listed are Star Wars and Dune, which are huge scope stories that involve our main characters in conflicts with massive armies and mystical forces beyond their comprehension. I'm just not seeing that same scope of conflict in this logline currently. So you might want to suggest, is this Hornet in charge of a hive of evil Hornets that is going to destroy the butterfly homeworlds or the butterfly home, field? So just like, I'm going to say consistency and clarity and scope. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think the reason why I chose something like Star Wars or Dune is because I do want to have this like big world type of feel to what I'm doing. I just wasn't completely sure. I'm sure there's like that bit of element that's there, but I'm kind of just trying to see what other comps I could really, I guess, grab inspiration from for what I'm looking to do. But in terms of scope, that's probably why I decided to throw something like Star Wars or even Dune out there, because they have really interesting. Those type of movies take you to really interesting environments and have just really interesting visuals, which is kind of what I want to do.
That's true. They also often have larger sort of team building style casts or team building style structures to them, where the story of Star Wars is a naive farm boy teams up with a wise old mentor and a rogue fighter pilot and a feisty princess to take down the Empire. Whereas I'm not really getting a sense of the cast if you are doing a similar team up sort of like that. So maybe maybe like clarifying central relationship or relationships, like I mentioned in the last set of feedback, will help with this one a little bit too, just to get a sense of that scope. It's nice to boil it down as much as possible to just mention your hero and villain and maybe just one other. But if this is going to be something of a bigger scale like that, then we might just want to have a little bit of sense of who the other characters are that we're going to be working with. So, main notes.
And
go ahead. Well, we just have a few minutes left, so I can't get to way too many other log lines. I'll take one question, though, if you have it. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I do have something like that where he does meet other specific characters. In particular, there's a praying mantis he comes across. But at the same time, it's like I don't know how much in the logline that needs to kind of be described, because if that does make sense, of course.
Well, you say he sets off on an adventure, but we kind of assume that in this genre, so you can efficiently hint at something like this by saying something like, a stargazing butterfly must gather a team of the toughest bugs in the backyard to find a new energy source for his colony. See what I mean? So, and that way we imply the adventure. He gathers a team of bugs to go on an adventure to do this goal. Like, so you can efficiently use your words there by just omitting the things that we already know, the things that we already assume. Okay, so consider including just an inciting incident in this when a drought threatens the colony, something like that clarifies what the stakes are. Consistency and clarity of scope, so if we're going to have big armies or big, like, more complicated villainous forces than just one single Hornet, then you want to suggest what that is. Maybe the Hornet is like the queen of her colony, in which we might understand, okay, all of that faction of bugs is going to be against our faction of bugs. And last, you might just want to hint at central relationships if there are any important ones. If there's a mentor, if there's he has to team up with this person that you never think he'd get along with in order to complete the quest. Something like that, just build out the world a little bit more in terms of the characters. But the basics are definitely there. I mean, I think we could all pretty much see this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have just a couple minutes left. I think we have time for the rest of them, though. We'll stay just a few over time if needed. Let's I'll tell everyone we're getting close to wrapping up. I just want to get these last couple done. Let's do. We have Alien Boy and Lizzie, I think, are our last ones. And somebody actually messaged me one.
Oh, sorry. I'm like super new, so I didn't know how to get it to you.
That's okay.
There's like a general chat, and it's not showing up in your screen's chat, and I didn't know.
Oh yeah, it's called features class. It's okay. I got it though. So okay, we got 3 more. Thanks for that, Sarah. All right, we're gonna go through these last ones. We might stay like 10, 15 minutes over. So normally we try to wrap right around the sort of 2-hour mark, but if needed, we will go over in the end. So let's get to these last couple. We'll start with Alien Boy. We have Welcome Home, Eleanor.
Gone Girl meets the Stepford wives. A clone of a recently deceased wife of an engineeress discovers that he is harvesting a dark secret.
Welcome home. Okay, so we have a sci-fi thriller. Gone Girl meets Stepford wife. Sure. A clone of a recently deceased wife of a geneticist is already just kind of a confusing mouthful at the very beginning. You have a blank of a blank of a blank. You just need to like simplify this a little bit. So, recently deceased wife of a geneticist. So you don't want to frame somebody, usually, especially your protagonist, in terms of she's somebody's wife. He's her husband. So like, you don't want to define any character by just their relationship to another character usually. So we probably want to say something like what exactly is happening here? The clone of his recently deceased wife. So what is the inciting incident of the story?
This is a recently this clone is recently being made because the wife has died.
So is the inciting incident when he makes a clone of his dead wife?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's how you're gonna want to phrase the beginning of this. So when so a geneticist makes a clone of his dead wife. I think you need just something like a dark secret. You need to tell us what it is, or you need to give us a little more, and that will help us see the movie a little better. If we just say dark secret, that can mean almost anything, and it doesn't really help us understand what we're going to be watching the character do. So you might say something like, when a geneticist clones his deceased wife, she soon discovers that he is hiding an army of clones under his warehouse, and now she must stop them before he kills her. See what I mean? That way we just have a clear picture of what we're doing. Okay. Clear picture of what we're doing. So, no ambiguity in Dark Secret, or less ambiguity, I should say, in Dark Secrets. And consider what is the main character's personality type, or an adjective to describe them. We usually want to know an adjective that's going to describe your character in terms of what is the journey they're going to go on. Saying she's a cloned person doesn't really give us a sense of the personality. That is true, and like we do need to know that for the narrative. But if you can find just one word to give us, like, why is this going to be her story? And also we want to know, like, and the big thing of and then what. So it's like, when I say clear picture of what we're doing, you say the character discovers something, and that's like, where is that? If we say, wait, so sorry, let me slow down. What we say right here is just one sentence. A clone discovers her husband has a dark secret. That's like, what, 25 minutes into the movie? So we want to suggest the rest of it. So when she discovers this dark secret, she must now stop X from happening, or expose X, or outwit X before stakes. Make sense?
Yeah, and to be fair, I did imagine this as a short film.
Oh, a short film. Okay. Well, in that case,
Yeah.
the regular logline rules won't really apply as much, but you should still clarify what we're going to be doing in the short. So, discovers the dark secret, and then must, what, kill him? Escape from him? Expose him? Like, what's her actual...
Yeah, escape. Yeah, pretty much escapes because she realized what he's doing, and she must escapes from this.
Escape from him. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that'll work fine. Cool. Questions on this?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Make what's going on, the dark secret, more clearer, less ambiguous, because that was my idea when writing the log line, to make it more of make it, I guess, give it more suspenseful, like what is it, like she wants to find out, as well as like it gives people curious of what it is.
No, so that usually doesn't work. In log lines, we don't want to be using too much mystery or ambiguity. It doesn't grab people's attention. It pushes them away. Imagine that so at least for features, I mean, for shorts, you're in your own sort of world, and if you're making this short yourself, you don't need to worry about the log line as much. But I'll just tell you, in terms of feature films, if you give a log line to someone, that person has read 100 log lines that day, and they can only read a few of the scripts, so they would have absolutely no reason to pick one that they're like, well, this person isn't going to tell me the basic hook in the log line. Yeah, stay away from ambiguity, especially when it comes to horror thriller. Give us the reveal. Give us, when this cool reveal happens, our main character must now do this difficult thing, which is going to, be difficult, dangerous and life-threatening and everything, but we have just a little more information. We don't want to say just, she discovers a secret.
Okay, so I got that. No ambiguity in the horror thriller log lines. Right. Okay.
Thanks for this. Looks like we have 2 more to do. Let's do. Oh yeah, you that's the right spot, Sarah. Nice work there. So let's do Lazita, then we'll do Sarah's, then we'll be done for today. We have By Yourself. Go ahead. Is it Lazid or Lazita, perhaps?
Lazita had to run, so Lazita's not in the channel.
Not in the channel. Okay, I'll give quick feedback on this then. By Yourself, sci-fi horror and thriller. The logline is a 19-year-old woman named Nick is living alone, but she always sees stuff that words can't explain. I'm not sure what kind of stuff words can't explain to begin with, because words can explain almost anything. We're writers. That's kind of our whole job. A 19-year-old woman named Nick is... We don't need to know the character's name. Most people would say a 19-year-old is a teenager, not a woman, but fair enough. I guess legally you are an adult. But the fact of the matter is you should just be describing this character more in terms of adjective than, some sort of title for the protagonist. You could say teenager. We don't need to know their name, though. Is living alone. We want to avoid these passive statements like is doing this or is doing... she is like this. She is a this. She is doing this. You want to frame it in terms of active incidents. So we might want to say when X inciting incident happens, an adjective teenager must, so we might say a psychic teenager, perhaps, must conflict or else stakes. I think we're missing a lot of that from this one. Make sure that you're answering all those questions. We want to know what the main character has to do, a tangible goalpost for them, and who they are as a person, so we imply an internal journey. Try to go back to the drawing board on this one, use our template a little bit, and I think you'll be fine. All right, thanks for this, guys. I think we're hearing some voice from Alien Boy, if you don't mind muting your mic. Sarah, do you want to read, is it Jenny? Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a bit right on the fly, so, yeah, Jenny. 19 years after a traumatic incident in college, when Mandy returned home in the morning after a night of partying, to her dog not in her room where she left her, a disheveled garage, and her dead dog down the road, and no answers from her 2 roommates, a dog-loving... Well, I'm going to change that adjective. A woman must communicate with her beloved dog's spirit to find out what happened that fateful night in order to face her roommates with a clear heart at a quickly approaching impromptu college reunion.
All right. Thank you for that.
I was trying to pay attention to what you guys are doing while coming up with this, so...
No, I understand. Yeah, it's not super easy. The first thing is, do you think you could say this in one breath?
Well, I can have a big breath, but yeah, I will make it shorter.
Yeah, so we want to have one breath. This would be, to me, this seems more like a 3 to 5 breath logline. This is a really, 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 really long run-on sentence. So it's grammatically correct, but just the fact that it's grammatically correct doesn't mean it's going to be the best possible logline. So I think we need to boil this down to some of the more essentials of the situation. I need to make sure I understand it. You said it's a fantasy dramedy. Okay. So 19 years after a traumatic incident in college, when Mandy returned home. Is this the incident that you're starting out by describing the incident?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. When she returned home in the morning after a night of partying to her dog not in her room when she left her, a disheveled garage. So 19 years after her dog's disappearance?
Well, this actually happened to me in college. I drew from real experience. Like, yeah, I came home from partying. My dog was in my bedroom, but then, like, my roommates were like, we don't know what happened. The whole garage was messed up, and then the dog escaped through the heat vent and then ran out to the road and got run over.
That's terrible.
That's the
I'm
traumatic
sorry to hear
event.
that. Good Lord.
That's okay. A lot of healing has happened since then, but yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Okay. So I guess I would say you've explained way too much of the situation. We just want one simple sentence that explains the movie in terms of when inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else stakes. So I think we can cut out almost all of those words and say 19 years after her dog's disappearance, a dog-loving woman must communicate with her beloved dog's spirit to find out what happened that fateful night in order to face her roommates with a clear heart and a quickly approaching impromptu college reunion. Why does she have to figure out what happened to her dog before this reunion?
I know. I was asking myself the same question. I was trying to
So
put it together.
You need to have some kind of clear, emotional, rational reason why your main character has to do this and why they have to do it now, which can be kind of tough sometimes. I like what you're saying. So the story is really a lady's trying to communicate with her dog's spirit to find out what happened to it, right?
Yeah, it's like a story of healing, kind of reckoning of the past before, kind of seeing people she hasn't seen in a long time where, she's a different person. And it's the journey of like the communication with the dog. And it's going to be, I mean, I haven't come up with this up until the last 5 minutes, but, communicating with the dog probably brings up a lot of like, that's the probably comedy part of it. They share a lot of old memories and the dog's able to communicate with her and she grows as a human.
Oh, so she's actually talking in coherent sentences like with her dead dog?
Yeah, like communicating with a spirit.
Okay. So the dog just can't tell her what happened to it, though?
It can, but it's kind of like it acts as a teacher in this movie. Like along the way, the dog does say what happens. Once Mandy's able to begin communication with the dog, she meditates, she starts reaching out. She's kind of starting to see images and hears her dog, and they start this kind of communication channel. And the dog kind of becomes like a healer for her, like a lot of animals are for humans.
But so if the dog is able to, as soon as she's able to contact it, it's able to resolve the main conflict, which is figure out what happened to it, then what's the movie? What's the conflict of the movie?
It's like, yeah, the dog and Mandy kind of, they heal this kind of traumatic incident from the past, and she grows as a human. Yeah, I mean, there's, I see what you're saying.
Right. It's just, that feels like very intangible goalposts. So when we say tangible goalposts versus intangible, tangible is something we can clearly tell that thing has happened because we have seen your character accomplish it. You can't see something happen in a character's mind, though. You can't see the fact that they have healed or the fact that they've moved on from something, which is why so often we'll frame this around some kind of external event. Like not just suggestion, and kind of where I thought you were going with this was Nacho says, could it be sort of a murder mystery, finding out which of the roommates or love interest was responsible for the dog's death or disappearance or something like that, might give us the more tangible goalpost, which is solve the central question. That's what a mystery plot type is. It's a plot where the story is over when the main character resolves a central question. If this is going to be more of a drama where your main character connects with her childhood dog and is just, or maybe not childhood, but from a long time ago dog, and is just trying to sort of heal or move on in her life in some kind of way, then you need some kind of other tangible goalpost. I wouldn't suggest there's going to be a mystery if the mystery doesn't matter.
Yeah, not the mystery. What you just said, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then you'll need a new goal for them. And the logline should reflect that. And it'll be something like when she perhaps unexpectedly makes psychic contact with her deceased dog, an adjective woman must XXX specific tangible goal or else / before XXX tangible ticking clock. Something like that. Or, maybe your inciting incident is not making the psychic contact. Maybe it's, I don't know, when I couldn't say. But the point is you should maybe just phrase it more along these lines, and you're going to need to find something else for her to have to accomplish.
Okay.
Makes sense? So we're looking for something very clear. It could be something that we understand that this internal journey is going to be supported by and like carried under. Something like if she's like, I need to find where my dog is buried and bury it in the place where the dog always wanted to be buried instead. Then it's like, okay, once she accomplishes that very clear visual thing, as soon as the shovel comes down and the dirt is over top of the grave, then her goal is accomplished. Although in order to get there, we might have had to go through a lot of internal healing or some kind of interesting adventure, or like, I think you just need to decide on a plot type.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Any questions on this?
No, I just try to take a screenshot. So those notes.
Sure. Let me just paste it in the chat as well, so you can just copy and paste.
Oh, thank you.
Discord. It's not going to be super clear, but should give you the gist of it at least. You can also rewatch this video later on YouTube if you want to.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. This is I like the idea though. Very original. I'm just looking for a thing like a goalpost for your character to be working towards. Then I think this one would really stand out.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, that is the end of class for today. Hopefully this has given you some good things to think about and some feedback to refine your logline. For next week, what you should do is get that logline as good as you can possibly get it, and you should be prepared to read a complete feature film script from beginning to end. I'm going to ask about this every single week, and every week, like 3 or 4 people are like, nope, I didn't read anything this week, and I'm like, you need to be reading 3 things a week. 1 thing a week is actually like the easy mode. So you must be reading scripts. There is no way to write good scripts if you do not read tons and tons and tons of scripts. By next week, read an entire script from beginning to end. It does not have to be off a Blacklist, but Blacklist is a great place to find unproduced scripts, so you should gravitate generally towards spec unproduced scripts rather than stuff that has been made already, because what you'll find often for those is shooting scripts, which are not as helpful for us, and it's not exactly the same kind of document that we're going to be making. So aim for reading spec scripts. Pick a feature. Every one of the features in this, or every one of the folders in this this folder that we've just shared, they all have a guide document, which is, they're numbered usually. They'll be numbered like 00, 01, 02. 00 in almost every folder is going to be a guide document that has all of the log lines, all of the descriptions, all of the names of the writers and everything in them, so you can pick and decide. Like go through all of them and pick like 10 scripts that you want to read and make that your cue. And then every week you need to be reading between 1 and 3 of these and be prepared to talk about what did I notice, what did I like, what did I learn. It's not like a quiz. I'm not going to ask you to tell me the major themes in 5 paragraphs or less. It's just to make sure we're reading things and paying attention, and there is no way to do this unless you're reading. So by next week, refine logline, fill out sketchbook, and read an entire script beginning to end. Sound good, everybody? Any questions?
Does it have to be from the blacklist, or it can be any like random websites that allows people to read script for free?
You can read a full feature script from anywhere, but the blacklist will have the best examples to choose from, because like I mentioned, those will be spec scripts that are often going to be unproduced, and they just, if you Google another random script title, you will often find a shooting script, which is a different sort of thing than we're trying to make. So I would recommend Blacklist, but if you have some other script you really want to read, you can read anything. Let's look at what's coming up next. We have, so yeah, week 1, June 24th. Come with a sketchbook filled out and a script read. What's next at Script Camp? We have these classes Wednesday, Thursday, 5 to 7 every week. We have new feature bootcamp that's starting on June 24th that I just mentioned. Horror Thriller Bootcamp just ended, and we are moving that into rewrite. So we're going to see if we get enough students for rewrite. If not, we'll probably change that to sci-fi for a 4-week class. And then we have Writers Lab, Saturdays 4 to 6. If you sign up to be a member and you want extra help with anything, more questions, topics you want to hear more about, or logline work, or anything else, up to 5 pages of anything you're writing, you can come and get as much help as you'd like individually in the lab. So Saturdays 4 to 6. New TV pilot bootcamp starting soon as well. That's going to be June 26th, this Sunday, 11 to 1. We have table reads on Sundays at 2. Script swaps Tuesdays at 5. Anything else to announce, Nacho?
Yeah, just be sure to come back on Friday for the free bootcamp class with Connor. It's going to be Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Thank you for that. Yep. So you can RSVP, but you don't need to. You can just drop in. Here's a list of everything coming up, and we have an exciting new free one-off class, how to design a pitch deck, so a graphic design class for visual materials for a script. That's on the 2nd July, and that should be super cool. Also, just a bunch of topics coming up: dialogue, scene work, characters, words on paper, script analysis. That'll be a new class starting the 20th of July. We have endings, thriller, escalation, copyright, villains, options, a brand new class on crime genre on the 25th of August, and plenty of other great stuff. So hope to see you guys soon. If you would like to sign up, we're glad to answer any other questions that you guys have. So send a message to me or Nacho, or you can email Connor@scriptcamp.net. Thanks so much for coming, folks. We hope to see you soon. Have a great rest of your weekend. Or, it's not weekend. I normally teach weekend classes. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.